Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone watching at home. Welcome back to Full Circle. We're here for yet another week of the OS World Cup discussions, semifinals recap, and finals predictions this week. We are getting down to the wire as I pause a little bit to mute the Twitch stream so I don't hear myself talking.
I did the
I am
same
Dio.
thing.
Yeah, same thing. I'm Dio. I am joined here once again for our recap and discussion to start things off with this one guy and iFlame. Aaron, good afternoon. iFlame, good afternoon.
Hey,
Good
good morning.
afternoon.
It's 1 p.m., but it's still morning.
True. Yeah, this was a really cool week. I think
It's
there
a
were
week,
actually a lot
man.
of good a lot of good
So much
matches this
fun.
week. I'm really excited to talk
Well,
about them. And we only have 12 matches total to talk about. So we actually have quite a lot of time to discuss
We
all of the
can
matches, which is
just
great.
we
we
get
can
to be
chill
chill
out a
this week. It's
bit.
awesome. Yeah.
Well,
I feel like
Yeah.
it's been like a lot of compressing stuff into limited time, and now we can just like vibe.
exactly. Get some popcorn in the microwave while we're discussing matches and have a good time.
Yeah. All right, well, let's start the vibe off, shall we? We've got eight matches from last week to go through. Six of them in losers bracket. We're going to start off with USA versus Sweden in the discussion. This was, I think, mostly what people expected, right? USA had first ban and banned out Double Time 1 and Hard Rock 1, just kind of double banning AIM against Sweden. Sweden banning out Hidden 3 and DT2 against the United States, banning out Speed. And then it was USA wins their first pick, Sweden wins their first pick off the back of really sick full combo by Phelan on Sig Sig. And then every other pick went to the USA.
Yeah, this went exactly how it was expected to. I don't think anyone, unfortunately for Sweden, gave them really any sort of chance to win this. The USA is just scaling into oblivion as they always do every year. They have one of the best late round teams in and year out. That being said, USA set some like actually nuts scores in this match. I do want to highlight like the Nomad 3 double FC from Taquito and Rectagon was insane. Bashi FCing Hidden 2 was insane. Woodshi getting the FC on Nomad 5. And then the double FC on DT3 from Window Life and Rectagon. Like, yes, Sweden was overmatched. Yes, USA was always going to win this, but USA still set some pretty insane scores that were very scary if you're their opposition.
Yeah, the US had, I think, across the weekend between their two matches, five number one team scores. The Boshi HD2FC you mentioned was number one on the weekend, so really impressive stuff. And I think everyone knew this was going the way of the US, but Sweden are ultimately going to be happy with the performance, right? They were a pretty low seed. I think they were seed 23 or 24. And so they're
23.
going to be pretty happy with themselves to just get this far. They knew they weren't going to play against the US, but they got themselves a point, and that's kind of all they could ask for. There was also an interesting trend this weekend where nearly every match, except for one, I think, we saw one of the teams ban out some combo of DT2, HD3, No Mod 5 with those three speed picks.
It's really interesting, like the change away from standard slot pooling and the way it's affected like picks and bans. Um, but I'm being ping pinged. Okay. I'm hearing audio is delayed. I'm not sure what the story is necessarily with that. But the way that like the non-slot pooling has affected picks and bans, like they change so much week over week because you go from like a very like an alt and a tech Hidden 3 Hard Rock 3 in quarterfinals week to having a speed and a stamina Hidden 3 Hard Rock 3 in and a true Nomad 5 as well in semifinals week. So I feel like especially with this particular pool, like USA was so advantaged because there was so much tapping in the pool. That's like, oh, we double ban tapping against them, GG. Except there's like 6 tapping maps still.
Yeah, exactly. And that played out over a lot of matches, right? You see those kind of two out of three of those speed maps banned, but there's still so much more tapping in the pool that you can't just, I think it was even just last week's pool, it felt like you could mostly ban out the tapping and have maybe one or two tapping focus picks left. This one, not so much. I feel like the strong tapping teams had pretty big advantages this week.
Yeah, I think that also kind of went with the gimmick a little bit last week as well. Like you had Nomad 1 in fucking Friday, and then Hard Rock 1 is like CS 5.85 on 220 BPM, so it's much harder for just pure aim teams to pick into something like that. DT1, of course, is 278 BPM, and of course AR 10.3, so there's a significant advantage there for teams that are a little bit faster on aim, or who are just really good DT teams in general, like Australia. And then Fremod 1 is Awkward Aim, AR9, CS 3.5 with like the big washing machine circle patterns in the map. So there's a lot of less of just the raw aim mechanics in this pool than you would typically find in a lot of other pools. And the aim is a little bit more gimmicky. A lot of the slots themselves are relatively gimmicky if they're not, speed. Tech Hidden 1, for example, kind of control focus, Hard Rock 2, lots of alt and control in the pool overall. And I feel like teams that were spec'd into both of those skill sets at once were really, really dominant on this pool. And I think that's a lot of what the USA opted for, right? When you look at the supporting members for USA, it's, Window Life Witchy, who are both speed players, and Fiery Boshi, who are both gimmick players. So I feel like the USA really benefited from the semifinals pool being the way that it was, with a lot less raw aim mechanics, a lot more speed mechanics, and I think more compared to a lot of other tournament map pools. And I think that'll probably do it for this matchup. We can talk more about the USA when we get to their second match, but for now we'll move on to Poland versus China. This was almost exactly the same, in fact, as USA versus Sweden. It was also 6-1. It was also for Poland, and also the only point that China took was on Sig Sig in Fremod 4, off the back of an FC, this time on Hard Rock from Crystal.
Dude, that score was nuts, by the way.
That
score was so sick.
That score was sick. Yeah. I don't know, like, thoughts? This is basically the same match.
Yeah.
China just banned Hidden 3, Hard Rock 3, or Hard Rock 2, excuse me. So Poland banning the Hard Rock 3, China banning Hidden 3 and DT3 in this matchup. So again, a double speed ban from China, and just a couple bans on stuff that China's typically pretty good at, the Fremod 2 and Hard Rock 2 from Poland. And yeah, aside from China's first pick, every pick went to Poland, and it was 6-1 at the end, which was uncannily similar to USA versus Sweden.
Yeah. I don't think there's too much to say about this one. Malashevsky played very well, as everyone expected. Most of the maps were blowouts. There were very few close maps. I mean, a lot of the scores were 500,000 plus in favor of Poland. Even China's one win was by like 450,000 or something. So it was an exciting weekend, but this match was not one of the exciting ones, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's funny how the bracket just worked out that way, where you had the two weakest teams, I'll just say it because I think it's true. The two weakest teams remaining were up against the USA and Poland, who are just like juggernauts in this stage. And so neither of those two matches was ever going to be close, unfortunately for China and unfortunately for Sweden, because they're both good teams. But neither of those matches was just ever going to be close. And indeed, neither of those matches was close.
But Aaron, how can you call China one of the weakest remaining teams? They only lost in OWC to seed number 1 and seed number 2. Surely they're like a top 3 material sort of team. I mean, they only lost to the top 2 seeds in the tournament.
I think the only team that was left in the bracket last week that they could have beaten was Sweden. I'm sorry, China. I love the Chinese guys. Like, this is with all the respect that I can give them, but it's just how it is. Like, they lack a little bit of the depth that they would need. They have a super strong 4 core. Like, we talk about that match in, match out for them. Like, the Crystal and the Lols is always going to be an insane 4 core, but they don't really have the backing roster that they would need especially for scaling into semifinals and finals pools. But I mean, yeah, shout outs to them. Like, they outperformed their qualifier placement, just like not quite to the same extent as Sweden, but top 12 has I think the 16 seed is still pretty cool. China's a team that's just like always going to be this good. Like, I feel like their floor is super high, but unfortunately their ceiling is like, their floor and their ceiling are identical. Like, they're never going to get, it feels like they're never going to get worse than like top 16, top 12, but they're also going to never get better than that. It's just the state of affairs for that country.
I feel like top 8 is doable for the China team.
Top 8
with a good bracket.
Top 8 would require a good bracket. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think it kind of is a little bit reminiscent of Taiwan teams in previous years where they were just insanely good early rounds and super consistent, could consistently get, into the later stages of the tournament, but ultimately outscaled by, finals, grand finals, even semifinals pools a lot of the time.
Yeah. And then the Poland roster for this match, right? I think we started to see the beginnings of this roster having a bit of a worse time. Rafal, for example, was one of their top performers in previous weeks, had a really, really good score on the DT1, but aside from that, was dropping third, fourth scores on basically every map for Poland until we got to Blue Zenith at the end of the matchup. And I think when what is one of your core members at that point starts to get outscaled a bit, that's kind of the beginning of the end for the team overall, right? You have a lot of other really good players on the Polish roster, obviously Malashevsky and Nahu. Sorry, I think the two to look out for on this roster, generally speaking. They're kind of the top performers in 1v1 tournaments recently. They've been grinding team tournaments all year long. And so when your kind of third core member in Rafal starts to have a little bit of trouble, I think that starts to be more of an issue for this team than you might like at first glance. And that brings us to our next match, which is United States versus Poland. Everybody was expecting this match to be really close. This was Seed 2 versus Seed 3 out of qualifiers. And it just was not all that close. USA seems to have completely outscaled Poland by this point. DT1 and Hard Rock 1 bans for the United States, banning out aim against Poland. Poland double banning speed against the USA, which, if you look at the team scores, was a smart decision from Poland. And again, Poland losing their first pick, actually. They did win their second pick. They got a break point very late on into the match, but this was, by and large, a very dominant match for the United States.
Yeah, this is the match that, I mean, it kind of makes me eat my words from last week where I was, like, concerned about the United States, because clearly there was nothing to be concerned about with the United States. I will say, like, I was
Rumors of their demise have
yeah,
been
yeah,
greatly
yeah,
exaggerated.
My favorite
Yeah.
phrase. I'm a little concerned about the fact that they lost DT2, but that was just Malashevsky, like 1v9. I feel like United States probably shouldn't be losing that map in a semifinals against a team that only puts up one score over 600k. But yeah, other than that, it was again like the USA we've kind of expected in the past, where they always seem to have somebody either on an FC or on a giant combo when it matters. You have Vaxe kind of showing up once more, like the Nomad carry in these late stages on the free mod picks, where he FC'd Sig Nomad. He one slider broke Zetsu in Nomad in the free mod pool, and then he FC'd Takatori Hisho Nomad as well. So like that Vaxe that we've known in the past is finally returning to form after having a few really not so great weeks by his standards. And dude, Rectagon, like, can we talk about Rectagon? Back-to-back Hard Rock FCs on Fremod 2 and Fremod 1. That was actually messed up. I don't know. USA is doing USA things again, and that's really, really scary for everybody else in the bracket, because this looks a lot like what happened last year, where the USA lost in semifinals, so a round later than this year, but then they go into losers bracket, and then they're just like, okay, we got to take this seriously now, and they just demolish everyone in front of them. Because I was obviously among the people who thought that Poland could win this match, and at worst case, it was going to be close. And then it, like you said, it just wasn't.
Yeah.
USA just came out firing on all cylinders, and there was nothing Poland could do other than being better at aim, because the United States is like inexplicably never does well on Nomad 1s. And
or
then
pray for Malashevsky to FC.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, Malashevsky, what did he have? 3 total 100s on Nomad 1 between 2 plays? No,
Yeah,
this
he
was
had the
7
top
100s. He had
2
8
scores on
100s.
Nomad 1.
Yeah, he FC'd it both times.
Yeah.
I mean, but other than that, it's like, what do you do against USA once they get to these late rounds where they just have players for every map and very few other teams do?
Yeah, I feel like Poland kind of runs into this issue most years, just a lot later into the tournament than most teams, where at a certain point they get a little bit outscaled by teams like the US and South Korea, and it just becomes, okay, how far can Malashevsky take them? And if they weren't up against the US, he probably could have taken them, one more round to finals, but not up against the US. There's just too much depth, too much, they're just too good. And so I lost my train of thought for a second.
Yeah.
Scaling?
It was there and
Poland
it's gone.
scaling?
Poland scaling? No. Okay, I remember. I was gonna say it's really interesting how with all the discussion we've had about how interesting this OWC has been, and with how much parity it feels like there is among some of the top teams, we could feasibly just have the US win a sixth time in a row.
Yeah,
It's very
exactly.
possible.
Yeah,
They're still
yeah.
a very good team.
Yeah.
And I mean, we talk about Vaxei. I think it helped that he practiced the right pool for the second match.
Question. Interrupting here for a second.
Yep.
Practice the right pool. I've been hearing this a lot this week. Is there any actual information that he practiced a wrong pool? Because I can't imagine somebody like him would do that. What's the
I don't
background
know.
on that
That's
one?
what I've been seeing a lot.
I know, I
I
have been
think-
too, and I don't know where
it
that's
came
coming from.
So the background that I know for a lot of this is that Vaxei before in previous weeks was kind of going with what the team was doing, which was practicing a lot and practicing basically all week long. And that's not really what Vaxei usually does, right? He
Right.
plays the maps like 2 or 3 times
Once,
max and then
twice, yeah.
says, all right, I'm good. And just grinds skill cap the rest of the week, right? And then shows up and pops off. And that's what he actually did this week instead of practicing a shit ton, is just playing the maps a couple times like usual and then playing the match like usual, which I think is the right decision, because if you're one of the greatest of all time and that's been your practice routine for years and what got you to that point, why change it up in the
Yeah.
middle of OWC, right? So I think that's probably the change
So it's
up
not
that people are
practicing the
talking
right
about.
pool, it's just practicing the right way.
It's practicing
There we
right.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, the play less
Right.
method. I made this
Not like
comparison.
Kiki with
Yeah,
his 10 locals on every single map in the pool every round of
that's
every
me.
tournament.
That's me. 10 locals on every map, still drop 500k. It's unlucky. I made this comparison last week for Poland just to bring that topic back around. Or not last week. I made this comparison on my own stream earlier this week, but this Poland roster low key feels like Australia's roster last year, where you had
Yeah.
MREC for Australia and then a
Yeah.
bunch of players who have been on the team for a really long time.
And they don't change them out.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I feel like it's really, really similar for this Poland
Yeah.
roster this year, with a lot of players who have been around for a long time and have started to drop out of the tournament scene bit by bit, and at this point don't really play all that many
Like-
tournaments anymore, like
Which
Bartek,
is-
for example.
Bartek and Rafis are like the two
Rafis.
notable for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like Malashevsky is MREC from last year in this scenario, trying his best to carry the team and just not being able to, because I think a lot of the rest of the roster, if anything, just doesn't have the tournament practice this year
Yeah.
to make good on what their potential could be. Because obviously we've seen Bartek be at the top of the tournament scene before, but I just don't think he's
Not
there
for a while.
anymore. Yeah.
Their core
Um,
needs to be like Malashevsky, Nahus, and like maybe Tomashik Kasiabarvika, however you're supposed to pronounce his name. Like
Yeah.
I feel like they should go
That's-
forward with that as their core.
Yeah.
And like because all the respect, obviously, like it's hard to say this and not sound like I'm flaming, but like you said, they have not been playing as much. Guys like Bartek, guys like Mustache, guys like Michny, guys like Rafis have just not been getting the tournaments in. So yeah, I agree
Mustache
with
has.
that.
Mustache has.
Has
I will
he?
come to Mustache.
I don't know that I've seen him. I guess
he
What is
played
he-
roundtable qualifier tournament earlier this year. He was playing like a bunch of other tournaments earlier this year. And he's been relatively active for several years now. I think his skill set is just more specialized, and so he doesn't
Yeah,
get to
maybe
shine.
so. Yeah.
And he often also just doesn't make it to some of the later rounds of tournaments. I think he was in Corsair's Closed also, if I'm remembering correctly. Can't remember exactly.
Was he?
I thought he was.
Don't-
Um,
I didn't
think
think he
so.
was.
was he not? Okay, I might be
I can bring it
misremembering.
up real quick. I didn't think he was.
Yeah. But
Oh,
yeah,
he was. What
was
the heck he
earlier,
was?
okay.
Wow.
Hey, I got the memory.
What
All
the
right.
hell?
Anyway, yeah, no, he plays
Oh, he
like
lost,
a lot of big
he lost,
tournaments.
He went 0-2 in close. That's why I don't remember. He,
Oh.
he
Yeah,
got, he
and
got Malashevsky in the first round, and then he lost to Taquito in the first round of losers.
Yeah,
So-
and I think that's the
Oh.
problem for Mustache, right? Is just that he's not going to be a core member because he doesn't have the skill cap yet. But he's doing the thing of grinding tournaments, right? Like that's not the problem for him. I think he's just having a tougher time actually getting to the point where you're becoming a core roster member with the skill cap to back it up for these super late stages in OWC. But a lot of the other members you mentioned, yeah, I agree. It's like they're just not getting in the tournament practice throughout the year, and I think that's the big problem. It's very similar to Australia from last year, and they need in my opinion, kind of a shakeup of the roster with a lot of new players. But the problem is finding the talent pool for that,
Yeah.
right? So
does Poland have like Australia, like they're discovering players like through ANZT, right? Because they have 2 of these a year. Like it's
They
a
do have
breeding
some
ground
regional
for new
tournaments.
players. I don't know what regional. I don't follow along in the Polish. The problem with the Polish community, of course, is that all their tournaments and everything is completely in Polish. So like I can't
hard to
just
follow,
I can't just easily go read through stuff.
Yeah.
But if they've got like I don't know. I mean, it's like that's how Australia got their new members, was like people showing up at ANZT and things. Like they had Sayo and AKNZX and those two are the two
JG,
that comes to mind.
Oslash,
and JGLF,
Zintex,
yeah. Like they all showed up in ANZT. So like I'm curious.
And then they
if-
went and played Course Ace together.
and
also.
they went and played Course Ace, yeah.
Similar to the South Korea method, where they have their their team of players all playing in Corsace, and I think
tried and
kind
true
of,
at this point.
Yeah, it works. Well, USA doesn't feel like they do that, but
even
USA has. I mean, we have USC, but that's like different because that's state-based teams.
Yeah.
So
They
it's a
also
little
just don't play, international tournaments together. That's the thing I was talking
Yeah.
about. Is tried and true. Is like go play Course Ace, go play any other big 4v4 together as a team, and do your best to the country.
And you've got Canada doing it as well, right? With Vesper.
Canada has so many tournaments.
They have a few. But kind of like to finally add on to that last point about Poland and needing to find some new players, I think the case with Australia last year is that some of their players were putting up decent scores with Poland. I think throughout this tournament and even last year's, Bartek and Rafis have continued to have some of the lowest match costs week after week, and so they really do need to find some new blood to rejuvenate the Poland roster. It can't just be Malashevsky and Nahus.
Malashevsky and the boys, with Malashevsky having to kind of 1v9. And I mean, he put up like good results this weekend, right? He was number 2 in performance score behind Emrek, and not like by a huge margin either. They both played really well, but who was their next best player, and where was their next best player is the question. Nahus down at 20, and then
Probably
Rafal down
Rafal.
at 34.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout outs to Raffle, by the way, and then Bartek at 43. Shout outs to Raffle, because I remember when this guy was like a 3-digit World Cup fill player and played like a couple of maps in 3-digit World Cup and was getting carried by the rest of the Polish team. And now he is, in my opinion, effectively a core member for the Polish OWC team. So big come up for that guy. Unfortunately, not going to be enough for this year. I think we probably beat the horse to death at this point with USA Poland. So this seems like a good transition to go into the next matchup, which by the way, Poland seed number 2 out in top 8. That is one of the biggest, unfortunately, underperformances for a top 3 seeded team that we've seen in quite some time. One of these two teams had to go. It was either seed 2 or 3 out in top 8, and it happened to be Poland this time around. So,
and it would have been more surprising if it was the United States based on history. Realistically.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Poland was. I mean, I said this before the match. Like Poland was the last team to actually eliminate the United States from an OWC.
Yeah,
this is true.
6 years ago.
Yep. I mean, Poland lost to the 7th seed. They're clearly the 8th best team in the tournament.
All right, moving on.
All right, moving on. Next matchup is Russia versus Germany. This is another one where we had a team eliminated who were even higher seeded than the place they were eliminated in. This time it was Russia getting eliminated by Germany. Russia, of course, seed number 5 in this, or no, seed 4, excuse me, seed 4, as Philippines was seed 5. Seed 4 in the tournament overall, eliminated in top 8 here by Germany. One of them, or sorry, in top 12 by Germany.
Top 12, yeah.
Top 12 elimination for seed number 4 in Russia, which is huge. That's pretty massive.
It's semifinals week, Russia, baby.
It's semifinals week, Russia. What can you say?
This happens year in and year out.
Yeah, Germany banning out the Hidden 3 and Hard Rock 2. Russia just banning out actually Speed into Germany, which I've been saying this throughout the tournament, but this Russian roster is just not a speed roster anymore. They're far more gimmick focused and aim focused, and that checks out when you look at their wins in this match.
Yeah, I was really surprised by the Hidden 3 from Germany. That is another kind of tapping focused map this week that most of the speed teams pick. So to see Russia ban out both of the speed picks, we know they're not a speed roster this year, and then have Germany ban out the Hidden 3 anyways was pretty surprising. I feel like that ban definitely could have been better used. But as for the match itself, obviously Kriller was just insane as usual, played very well. It's easy to forget how good Whitecat can be on some of these higher skill cap pools. I feel like he obviously is not playing as much as he has in past years, so we haven't seen that same consistency from him earlier on in the tournament in the on the easier pools. But now that it's into the later stages, we see, White Cat having some of the higher skill cap on these pools and performing well for Germany. Had, I think, the second highest match cost in that match. And we saw a general trend of Russia generally being more consistent. We had Gamer, we had Scroll, Welter, and Shikoni were all in the top 6 for match cost, but it was just Kriller and White Cat. That duo was too much for Russia. And of course, it was the same duo on the tiebreaker to win it for Germany.
Yeah, this match cost is very telling, where you have Triller Whitecat and then 4 members straight of Russia before you get to another German player. This was just like such a, I don't know. This was a pretty big comeback, right? We had a couple of these last weekend. Russia was up 5-3, and then
Yeah.
Germany won 3 points in a
6-5.
row. Yeah,
Yeah.
to go to 6-5.
Mhm.
So they kind of clutched up, and like you said, I mean, you feel like maybe Russia a little bit ran out of picks there at the end. But Germany just played really well, like you said. I mean, it's Kriller and Whitecat, and I mean, actually, Shiak's coming through in the clutch as well on the hidden two. To which the last pick of the match by Germany was hidden two, which is like the craziest thing. If you think about what
Yeah.
Germany's been known for over the past few years, the fact that their last pick was hidden two is wild. But they won it by 400k plus, so clearly the correct choice. And yeah, Whitecat Kriller tiebreaker 161k. This one was pretty close all the way through, and then Germany just kind of pulled away at the very end.
Yeah. I will say, the last pick for Russia, I think, was pretty good. Chaconi actually FC'd with Hard Rock with 1080k, so 1.08 mil. But the overall difference in score on the MP link is 1.18 mil. So they end up losing that by about 100,000 score. Tragic last pick for Russia, as they would have won right then and there 6-3 if they had 100k more score on any of their other 3 members. But just not meant to be double FC or close to double FC from Kriller and Tim Kackner. Tim Kackner on the Hard Rock, getting the 6 miss 950k, I think really, really helped them on that pick.
Outside of that last pick, I was a little surprised Russia didn't test out the Hard Rocks at all. We saw Germany ban out the Hard Rock 2 with, I believe, their first ban, and then Hard Rock 1, Hard Rock 3 were just completely unplayed for the rest of the match. And I feel like those would have generally been Russia favored, is what I would have assumed, but maybe
Uh,
they weren't feeling it.
I don't think so, because Hard Rock generally you think of Russia from past years, but again, this roster is far less of a mechanics roster and far more of a gimmick roster. And Hard Rock 1 is just an aim map. That's Germany all the way. Germany is a really, really good aim team. They do lose the no mod one, but again, they win the free mod one, and of course, they have some pretty good Hard Rock aim players on the roster. And then Hard Rock 3 is Blue Zenith, which is just happened.
Yeah, it's just Germany.
And
That's
Russia
Germany,
double
man.
banned speed. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, this Hard Rock pool was like, I mean, there was literally one pick combined between Hard Rock 1 and 2. I feel like most teams this weekend just didn't like this Hard Rock pool outside, like the first 2 picks in this Hard Rock pool. Obviously, Blue Zenith 5 picks was tied second most picked map of the week, with multiple of their maps behind the 6 picks from Free Mod 4. But yeah, they're just
1 pick, 0 Hard Rock 2
yeah,
picks.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, no, neither of those compares to DT4, which literally completely untouched, which I don't think I've ever seen happen before a grand finals stage. I don't think I've ever seen a map completely untouched in OWC, which is pretty wild. But yeah, I think it was just a
I've been
case
to
where like
2 maps last week.
yeah.
Jeez.
Well, no, there was only the Hard Rock 2 was banned.
Yeah.
The Hard Rock, the DT4 was untouched completely.
Yeah.
That's
but
wild.
yeah, I think this Hard Rock pool just favored Germany when the maps were aim and stamina, which is literally just 2 of the things that Germany's best at, especially in late round. So yeah, not a lot left at that stage for Russia to try to pick into. That's just not a mod pool that they're gonna opt into.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, unfortunate loss for Russia. I mean, this is a team that looked extremely good coming into the tournament. I think I think we had them placed either top 6 or top 8
Top six.
on the tier list originally when we looked at the teams pre-tournament, pre-qualifiers. They obviously qualified seed 4 and had a really good run up to quarterfinals in the winners bracket. They lost in an upset in quarterfinals to Philippines, seeding upset, of course.
Yeah.
And then lose here to Germany, who are seed 6 and a really tough matchup for any team going into a later round, with Whitecat just finally hitting the scaling buff and end up losing it. It's quite
It's
sad
just
for Russia,
year.
but
It's just Russia year in year out, man. They get to winners
Yeah.
bracket quarterfinals every year, and then they lose in losers bracket semifinals week. I feel like it's just or like maybe finals week semifinal or finals week losers bracket. I don't know.
yeah.
They've got
The
good
more things
players. They
change,
just
the more they stay the same.
low key, no flame. I think seeding 4th was like a super overperformance in qualifiers for them.
I would agree. I would have expected them to be, I think, top 8, but
yeah.
on the lower half
Yeah.
of top 8.
I would have had
personally,
them
going into the tournament.
Wait, what's the seeding? I have to go look at. Oh my god, where can I even find it? Is the
Yeah.
seeding anywhere? The seeding's like literally nowhere.
There's qualifier results on the main sheet.
Oh. I would have thought they'd be swapped with like maybe Germany or Philippines, like the 5
Yeah.
or 6, maybe. Yeah.
I would be interested to see how the qualifier seeding for the US World Cup changed if they either A, didn't use 2 runs, because that's not the norm. 2 runs is an OWC specific thing. And B, if instead of taking your best score on each map, they took your best overall run through the qualifiers instead. Because I don't know, I say this every year, but I really don't get it. And you only get one chance in match. If you lose in match, right? Your run then and there is what counts. So I'm always
really
kind of confused about why we use double qualifier runs in OWC. But what can you do?
Yeah, that would be
It also
really
takes a while.
stat, actually. Maybe we have to get Shadows on that.
Yeah, first run, seeding based solely on first run. Unfortunately, there's no. Well, can you? Do we have? No, we don't have both runs visible. So
They do have run numbers
I
on
imagine
the
they have
qualifier
to.
sheet, like
Oh,
the
okay.
qualifier stats sheet.
you could do that, but
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I don't know. Any closing thoughts on Russia, Germany? Move on to the next one.
yeah,
I
nah.
think we're good to go.
Yeah, so I think I had Germany picked here if memory serves. Like it just wasn't super surprising to me. Germany just scales really well.
Yeah, I had Russia picked, but I figured it would be close. It was tiebreaker, and it went to Germany.
Yeah.
So I'm not super surprised at the result, despite picking Russia initially, because I think I had this literally going to tiebreaker in pick'ems. Okay, on to our next matchup, which was UK Chile. This was also a tiebreaker match, by the way.
It's so funny, the 6-1, 6-1 tiebreaker.
Yeah. Some uncanny mirroring going on in the losers bracket there. Bans were first ban for UK. They banned out the looks like Hard Rock 1 and Nomad 3. Chile banning out the Nomad 4 and Freemod 2 into the UK, which I think turned out to be pretty good bans. You look at the wins in this match, it was stuff like the Nomad 2, Nomad 5 win for UK, Hidden 2 win for UK, another speed win for UK on the DT2, and finally a win on Zetsu for the UK. Lots more aim mechanics or burst speed or stuff like long streams on Hard Rock 3 and Blue Zenith for Chile.
I just say shout outs to the quote unquote fill players for Chile this week, because holy crap, Suntan and TFGE played so well. Like you always expect Intercamming and Matthew to play well, but like the other players on this team came up so huge in this match, especially on the tiebreaker where TFG and Suntan were the top 2 scorers for Chile over Matthew and Intercamming. I really
Matthew
and
Intercamming both being below 400k on the tiebreaker is wild, and TFG 500k top scoring the map with Hidden is crazy. Top score for the weekend with Hidden.
And then you have like Yunha top scoring on Hard Rock 3. You have they had an SS right on something. Where is it? It's No 37 Hidden SSing Freemod 4, which is like that's his skill set, but that's still a 6 score to come up with in a match. So I think the story of this match was actually like Chile having the better backing players for their core members, which at this point can you even call them the same core members anymore when they're like not that rarely getting outperformed by other players on the team. Like obviously Faker Cambing. I love that
Yeah.
name change and I hate that name change at the same time. And Matthew are like the best two players on the team in terms of skill cap, but the other players came in really clutch in this one.
Yeah, no, it was a super impressive performance by everyone on the side of Chile. Of course, their TFGE Suntan coming up big in the tiebreaker. That SS that you mentioned was the only SS across the entire pool, so really impressive stuff there, despite, of course, multiple teams playing hidden on it. For the UK, it felt like it was mostly just a Colibed popping off, bringing them to tiebreaker with, I think, the highest match cost by a decent amount in that one. But it just wasn't enough. They didn't have that same support. I think after a Colibed, Bubbleman had a solid match cost, and there was a really steep drop off from there.
Dude, the Bowman score on Nomad 2, holy crap, 99.62
That was
ACFC. That was disgusting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty sick.
This is also one of the few matches where we didn't see either team feel like they really needed to ban out the speed, and it did turn out to make a lot of sense. I think we saw each of them taking one of the really speed-focused picks. So, as it turns out, neither of them were heavily speed favored on this one. So I do think the bans were unusual, but they made sense based on the match.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have too much to add. Shout outs again to the Phil players on Chile. Gonza full comboing DT3, number 37 SSing free mod 4 with hidden. Just like lots of really good scores when they counted from a lot of the supporting players on this team. And then of course, a very funny thing that happened at the very end of the match was Hard Rock 3 was actually a UK pick won by Chile. Hidden 2 was a Chile pick won by UK. So trade of breakpoints right before the tiebreaker for the added boost of confidence loss going into a tiebreaker, losing both of your picks right before tiebreaker. But this was yet another one of those really close matches, and I don't think I'm super surprised at Chile winning it overall. But I think UK had a really good run this tournament. This is a top 12 finish for them. Unfortunately, they were seed 8, so they do not perform up to their seeding. I think this is about where we had them placed
I
at the
think we
at the
had
start
them
of the
top
tournament.
12. I think we
Yeah.
had them top 12, and I think,
Yep.
I mean, like, I'm of such a divided mind on this one because I honestly didn't expect a lot out of this UK team on paper coming into the tournament. Like, I did not expect them to get top 8 in qualifiers for sure. But their actual ending finish was exactly what we would have expected out of it. And I had Chile picked in this match. I had it picked close. I think it was like, I think I had it 6-4 in my pick'em. So like, whatever, coin flip that. But I think we've had this discussion of like any sufficiently strong top player can become a top tournament player if they devote the time to it.
Mhm.
And we've mentioned this with like, I mean, Emrek is like a good example, right? Where he's just like the highest skill cap player in the world in solo, and now he's one of the best skill cap players in tourneys as well. And I think like if a Kolibed went the same route where he played tournaments and practiced tournaments and got good at tournament skill sets and consistency, that could be so huge for UK in the future. But he's just not quite there yet, despite putting up the top match costs in this one. There were, I think, still a couple of points where he could just do a little bit better, and maybe the outcome would be a little bit different.
I think he's definitely a lot closer this year than we have seen in past tournaments. We've seen him be kind of near the top in individual performance a couple times, so definitely not quite at that potential that I think based on solo we know that he could achieve if he really wanted to grind the tournaments. But we've certainly seen a lot of improvement out of him compared to even previous team tournaments that he's played in, where he would pretty much just come in for AIM maps and GT maps, and that's about it, despite being ranked, number 3 in the world at the time.
All right. I think we should probably start to speed it up a little bit.
Yep.
We've been 40 minutes, and there's
Yeah.
still 3 matches left in the recap. So this was one we can actually go over a little bit more quickly. It is Germany versus Chile. This one was not that close. It was 6-2 for Germany. They ban out the Hard Rock 2 and the Free Mod 3 into Chile. Chile bans out the Hard Rock 1 and the Free Mod 1 into Germany. And Germany just kind of wipes the floor with them. We saw Chile win a couple of picks on Nomad 4 and Nomad 5. But other than that, it was just all Germany. There wasn't really much to say. And I think this was kind of what we expected to happen when we were talking about this side of the losers bracket last week, is that whichever team wins Russia versus Germany in that match is just going to probably wipe the floor with whatever team wins UK Chile. And that's exactly what happened here.
Yeah.
Just another good performance from White Cat and Kriller having the 2 top match costs by a good amount. Even Nokinamo was ahead of Chile's second and third best players. And like you said, I don't think there's too much to say about this one.
Yeah, just like some really good scores. I just want to shout out, like the White Cat Hidden 1 FC was absurd. I don't know that we saw very many FCs on that. And then Double FC, the Nomad one with Kriller and White Cat. Just some very solid scores. And then again, Shiox with a nuts score on the Hidden 2, 2 100s with the unfortunate 1 miss. And of course, White Cat on Blue Zenith to close things out. This match went exactly how everybody expected it to. Very unfortunate for Chile, but like still a good performance for them getting top 8. So happy to see them performing admirably, but they just ran into a better opponent.
They overperformed their seeding, and it is the best finish that Chile has ever had in the World Cup since literally OWC number 1
Wow.
back in,
That's
what was
cool.
it, 2011?
That'd be 20. I think 2011, yeah.
I think 2011, because OWC number 3 was the same year as 2013 happened, so before it turned into an official tournament, right? So in the time that OWC has been an official tournament hosted by the game devs and organizers themselves, Chile has never done better than top 24 in the tournament overall. Back when it was single elim, they were 4th once and top 16 once. So this is their best placement in the last 10 years, now 11 years, actually, if you count 2013 as part of the last 10 years. Then it's their best placement by a very wide margin. So going from top 24 to top 8 as your best placement in the last 11 World Cups, I think is pretty goddamn solid for Chile. Not much more to say there. Germany continues to be a dominant force in the World Cups with 4 of 5 last years making top 3 on the podium. So not too surprised that they make it into top 6 again this year. In fact, they've been top 6 literally every year since 2014.
It's been a long time. Yeah, it's been a while. Germany's just always good.
Yep. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to our first winners bracket match. That is Australia versus Canada. This was
Wow.
This was a rough one for Canada, let me tell you. Australia just kind of decimated. It was 6-2. Canada won their first 2 picks, and they just ran out of gas. It was really, really close on all of the speed maps. About 100K on every single speed pick from Australia, with Canada putting up a very, very good fight. Only 43K on the Hidden 3 as well. But points a point, wins a win, and that's a 6-2 match at the end of it for Australia. Just Canada not able to win their own picks, not able to take break points on speed, and GG.
And okay, I'll say, like, I think we kind of talked about this match, and it went exactly the way like you kind of expect it to. The pool was more favored towards Australia. I think the reason that Canada won last week was that they had all these cut paper maps, and they picked all these cut paper maps, and he put up one of the best performances we've seen in a really long time. And then that just was not the case in this one. Australia had all of the answers throughout this entire match. I mean, even like 84K on the Free Mod 4, which was Canada's first pick. Like, you're not going to be too upset about that if you're Australia, I don't think. That's like, okay, this is close even on their maps. And then Australia just had, and same thing with Hidden 1, which was a little more one-sided. Again, just a super Canada map. Other than that, I mean, it was just, hey, we're Australia, we're insane on mechanics, and there are giga mechanics picks in this pool. Oh, and by the way, Emrek is just going to casually drop a 99.24 AC FC on Nomad 2 to help win it by 400K. That was messed up. And then, of course, you go into Nomad 5 and you get the 6-way FC, which was like I think that's got to be the craziest map of the entire weekend. Just 6-way FC Nomad 5.
Comboing DT3. Far East Nightbird full combo from Curtis, double FC from Ryuke, and losing the pick still into three-way FC on Skin Thief,
Yeah.
but Dummy puts up 500k and Curtis puts up 400k
Yeah.
is, I think, the saddest timeline for my boy that I've seen in the World Cup recently. Like, can we not get the team synced up here, guys? Can we not full combo the same map or what? Like, what's going on with these?
For context,
Realistically, though-
FC though, there was 2 other FCs on the map the entire weekend. One from Matthew and one from Wuchi. And otherwise, it was just those 6 players on Canada and Australia.
Realistically, this was just an insanely high level match overall. Like, they were in the number 2 and number 4 scores on Nomad 2. They were the number 1 and number 2 scores, of course, on Nomad 5. Canada had the number 1 score on Hidden 1. Australia had the number 3 score on Hidden 3. Australia had the number 1 scores on DT1 and DT3, with Canada getting second on DT3. Australia top score on Freemod 1, Canada 4th. Australia and Canada number 1 on Freemod 4, Australia number 2 on Freemod 4. Like, this match was just unlucky for Canada getting the matchup that they did, because they would have beaten a lot of teams playing like this, but unfortunately Australia happened.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. This is almost exactly like the Canada-USA match the week before, where it was that 6-2 with one team getting really, really solid team scores, a lot of those scores second best in the tournament, and the other team, unfortunately, getting a crazy amount of top team scores in the tournament. I think Australia had 4 or 5 top team scores, and so this time around, Canada was just on the wrong side of it, unfortunately. On top of the pool being very heavily tapping focused was really good for Australia, especially the Hidden 3 being a speed pick hurt Canada, because they would have loved to pick the Hiddens. So I think Canada will have a potentially a bit of an easier time with future rounds, but I do think there are going to be some scaling concerns for both teams going into the last 2 stages of the tournament.
I don't know. I'm just a little sad that the speed maps turned out the way they did. No FC on
too.
Skin Thief for Curtis. Very sad. Australia played awesome. What can you say? Like, they had double FCs on multiple maps. They were playing really, really well. They had some ridiculous scores when it mattered and were able to take breakpoints past the first 2 picks from Canada, and that's really all it took was 2 back-to-back breakpoints for Australia and winning their own picks. Yes, by 120k, 120k, and 43k for their last 3 picks. Only their first pick was really dominant, but again, doesn't matter when it comes down to it. If you win the pick, you win the pick, and that's all it was. Canada, I think, going to be generally pretty happy with how they played. Like, they played pretty well still. This is a very high level match, but Australia, top 3 guaranteed, first ever podium for Australia. The best they have ever placed is top 6. They are now guaranteed top 3, 2 stages better than their 2020 run. So they've got to be very happy with that.
It's developing talent, man. Like we talked about earlier, they've just done a really good job of cultivating talent and raising the level of these new players. I mean, 5 new members on the team this year, and they've been playing out of their minds. And I mean, it doesn't hurt when you have the literal best player in the world on your team either, because we've talked about this before, but having the ability to just know, okay, we've got Emmerich on our team, like, he's going to be setting a good score on this no matter what. Like, I've got to imagine it takes some of the pressure off, especially in late stages where having a solo carry is a lot more feasible than in early rounds where you really need a great 4-man. This match was a little bit of both, where Emmerich set some insane scores to help them win picks, but they also had some insane team scores that would have beaten, obviously, everyone, in the tournament. So really, really cool to see what Australia did this year with their roster and how they're performing.
Yeah. And I'm going to move us along for now, get into the last winners bracket match of semifinals, which was South Korea versus Philippines. We had 2 tiebreakers. This might have still been match of the week in my book. Like, this was pretty incredible to cast.
A good one.
This was an awesome match. I think this match went mostly as expected. You have Korea banning out DT3 Nomad 5 into Philippines. Right, Korea's speed roster is really kind of the only weakness you can poke holes at for this team, which is, of course, very good for Australia in the coming winners bracket match. We'll talk about that later. And Philippines banning out Hard Rock 2, Freemod 2, banning out some Precision and some Gimmick into Korea. This match was back and forth slugfest.
Oof.
We had Korea win their first pick, and then Philippines win the next 4 maps in a row. So 2 breakpoints and winning their own 2 first picks before Korea pulled off the comeback of a lifetime and won 5 maps in a row to win the match 6-4 and avoid tiebreaker. The storyline writes itself. I don't know, man. What else do you say? The storyline writes itself in that match.
There's I think 2 stories on this one. First is that I think almost every team in the tournament is going to run out of picks before South Korea runs out of picks, and I think that happened a little bit here. And also, we are finally, unfortunately for the dream run from Philippines, we're getting to the stage of this tournament where they're going to start getting 4th playered really, really badly on some maps. You saw like their bottom score on Nomad 3 was 160k, stuff like that. Like
that was on their pick as well, right? And I think if that's your pick and your 4th score, that is just you have either run out of picks or you are picking the wrong thing as a team. I don't even blame the 4th player in that case.
Yeah, and like Hidden 1, their bottom score was 279k B rank to finish out the match. Like, unfortunately for Philippines, you get to this stage where, yes, like Enri, Hyuk, and Nathan Ram are all going to be playing insane because they have really high skill cap. But I think this is the stage in the tournament where we really first started to see that crack in their armor that was 4th players not being able to put up the scores they needed. Like, props to them for making the most of the early stage of this match. But South Korea is just so deep and they have so many picks and so many options they can go into. And also, worst HR player is literally unbelievable. Like, Hard Rock 3F, like Blue Zenith HRFC in match. And then he goes back to back with the S rank on Nomad 3. Then he top scores the Hard Rock 1, and then he FC's Hidden 1 just to put a bow on the match. Like, or that might, is that an FC? I think that's an FC. Yeah. I mean, just outrageous how good that guy is.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important not only to have the star players with high skill caps like Henry, but you need the depth as well to not get 4th playered, which is so hard for a lot of teams on these later rounds, especially with it being, separated by country. It's really hard to. It's not like open rank where you just take 4 of the best players in the world and put them on a super team. You have a lot less options to choose from, so it's not easy to go into the later stages and have 3 star players that can all put up insane scores on grand finals pool. But Philippines is still in the tournament. They're going up against the United States next, so it's not over for them yet, and we'll see what they can do on the finals pool. It did feel like kind of the battle between worst HR player and Enri was a lot of fun, with worst HR player top scoring all of the Hard Rock maps that were actually played. So good performance there. And then, of course, Enri with some impressive scores as well. Less kind of top tournament scores and more just consistent good performances across the match.
1 slider break, 0-100, 0 miss play on Nomad 1 for Enri is a little silly there. 99.94 accuracy with 150 on the slider break. It's very sad, I think, for Enri, who played very, very well. And you can really see how impactful worst HR player was when it's worst HR player, Enri and Hyuk before you get to Karcher as the next match cost for South Korea. I want to praise the team building for South Korea here a little bit, right? You look at the way that this team builds a roster, and I think it just makes really good sense for what the World Cup entails. They do a couple runs through tryouts as usual, and from what I know, they just take the top 4 average score players from tryouts. 100%. Like, if it's your first year in OWC, you top scored tryouts, you're number 1 in tryouts, you just get on the team. And they then take other people to just build around the roster. And they've done that this year as well, effectively building a roster where they can just double ban speed and then maybe lose a couple points early on in the match, but just win tons and tons of picks as the pool comes down to the wire. And there's fewer and fewer maps that a team built like that can be bad on, right? When you have 4 top average score players out of tryouts who play every single map in tryouts, you're going to get a pretty well-rounded team to start with. And I think that ends up benefiting them a lot when it comes to later stages like this. And clearly it is what I think saved them in this match, as they got points on speed, density, hidden, Hard Rock death streams, Nomad alt aim control, Hard Rock high circle size aim consistency, and hidden stream tech. Like they played 5 different types of maps and won all of them for their 5 map run, right? This was not like, oh, they just picked one skill set and won all of it. Like they played 5 different types of maps and were able to win on all of them. So I think that depth of roster and well-roundedness in the as the pool comes down to the wire is really, really important for that team.
That's something we've been saying like since the prediction stream, right? Was South Korea's roster looked like it was going to be one of the most well-rounded rosters out of anyone in the tournament. That's why, everybody was picking them like top 2, because you have early stage, you have late stage, you have mid stage, and you've got players who you can put in for anything. And you've got this nuts 3-core, right? You've got Worst HR player, you've got Karcher, you've got Flying Tuna, and then you always have rosters for every type of map. I mean, you've got Allegrisimo playing insane, you've got Amiya Kokoro Parisia playing well, you've got Restia and Spectre coming in for like their maps, and it's just a roster, like you said, it just makes sense, man. It just makes sense.
Yeah. And their one weakness being speed is perfectly fine when you can play everything else. On any given pool, there's going to be generally a maximum of 2 pure speed maps. And even then, they're never going to be in the same mod category. So it's very easy to just ban both of those out. You probably still have some tapping picks, but even then, South Korea is not so bad at speed that they can't play the tapping. It's really just the raw speed, I think, that will really catch them out against most teams. But like we saw in something like the Hidden 3, which is speed, but not as much so as the DT2 or the No Mod 5, they can still put up some really good team scores. They were number 2 overall. And that's why they're the favorites coming into this one. And to me, they probably still are the favorites, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the prediction ends up being.
Yeah, we're
for
gonna
that
get to
one
that
as
in
we
just
have.
a minute or two.
Yeah, as we actually have 3 Australians for the prediction here. I think that's a good segue into starting up with the predictions for the finals weekend. Of course, we're not going to be starting with Australia Korea. That's going to be the last one up. But would like to welcome in Vorty and Mavs for the finals predictions part of the stream. Welcome in, gentlemen. It is. I don't know what time in Australia for both of you, but very early morning or very late night for both of you. So thanks for being here. Welcome to Full Circle for the first time, Mavs. Also,
thank you very much for having me, guys. Yeah, bright and early, 5 in the morning here in Australia. So, we're managing. It's all good. I'm here for the prediction stream. I'm excited to be here. So yeah, thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, welcome back, Vorty. Also,
yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm keen for this one. We have the full bias roster. There's gonna be an insane Twitter screenshot after this prediction. People are gonna think we are madmen, but you know what? I'm all here for it. I'm glad to be back.
That's okay. We've got 2 Canadian casters on for Canada, Germany, also. So
I love what we did with the commentary schedule this week, man.
Oh my god, it's funny. All right, we're gonna start off with Canada, Germany for predictions here. Yeah, Canada losing, of course, to Australia last weekend. Germany running through both Russia and Chile in the losers bracket. I think this is a pretty interesting matchup because Canada looked really good on speed last week. Germany has been kind of abusing speed against a lot of teams. And both of these teams have depth of roster for gimmick stuff. So, Aaron, do you want to start us off for this one?
Yeah, this is, of course, a revenge match here for Germany after losing a couple weeks ago to Canada to drop them down to the losers bracket in the first place. And it's interesting, and I think this is going to be the discussion point for probably a bunch of these matches, is how this pool is laid out, where there's really not much speed in this pool. Like, there's DT1, DT2, and that's kind of it, right? Like, this is not a pool that's meant for mechanics teams, which is interesting.
Wait.
Okay, what tapping maps are in this pool? What speed maps are in this pool?
Fremont 4 is Freedom 5. Fremont 4 is Freedom Dive.
Map. That is not a speed map.
That is a tapping map. That stream's down.
This Fremont 4 is not a speed map. It's a
DT3
and reading map.
DT3 is 270 BPM streams.
It's AIM. DT3 is an Arnold map. DT3 is an Arnold / Nissan map. That's all that is.
Okay.
This DT3 is not a speed map. It has like 2 streams in it, and the rest of it's just like old AIM. I don't know. I feel like this is just not a tapping focused pool, like, at all. And I don't even think the Nomad 5 is like it's like Nomad 5 has some tapping, but anyway, I'm just gonna base this on like feeling here because I don't really think there's a lot you can separate between these two teams, and so I'm gonna be picking Germany. I think we're at the stage where like Kriller Whitecat are playing really insane out of their minds, and their rest of their roster is constructed pretty well for late rounds. I'm curious to see what kind of performances we see out of Cut Paper this week because he was the big carry, of course, for Canada against the United States. Didn't play super well against Australia, and that was the big difference between those two matches for them. And I think this is a pool that he can probably do quite well on. Obviously, you've got like Zudi who's going to do well, but I think Germany in this sort of stage, I think they're at a better point in the tournament for them. I think this pool is, even without there being a whole lot of raw speed, I think is pretty good for them with having some very good gimmick players on their roster this year. So I'm going to say Germany, and it's like probably like a 7-5 match. This is a pretty close one.
Yep. I'm going to have to take Canada this time around. Got to go for Canada the whole way through. I'm sure
Yeah, of course, of
everybody's
course.
surprised. But I do think, outside of, bias, I do think this pool favors Canada. Germany has been abusing the speed against a lot of teams. This is not much speed in the pool, like you said. Won't go over that again. But even outside of that, I think Canada still has some very strong players that should be able to play this map pool in Xylus, Ryuke, and Zudi. I do think we're probably not going to see anything look quite like that quarterfinals performance from Cut Paper. Will be a little bit outscaled by this point in the tournament, but should still be able to put up some good performances on a pool like this. And so I think it'll definitely be close. Germany has their picks. Probably the hard rock, probably the tapping picks like Fremont 4 and some of the JTs. I think Canada generally should be favored on the hiddens and the non-tapping Fremonts, and probably quite a few of the no mods as well. So I'd give them the slight edge, and I would take Canada 7-6. We'll say tiebreaker.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. I think for this one as well, I'm putting Canada to win this. I saw a funny gif on Twitter. It was like it was the classic clip of Kobe and Shaq like playing basketball, and it was this Kriller Whitecat.
Whitecat, yeah.
And that's kind of what the match was. They got 4th and 5th overall on performance. That's partly because they also played like 16 and 17 maps. But then you have Kriller Whitecat, and then you have a massive descent to still solid players, but there's a very big gap between Kriller Whitecat and then you have like Shiox, Okinama. Shiox playing a few maps very well. Then you have the backing players Okinama, Karinya, Zayt, Frost. Meanwhile, Canada looks a little bit more well-rounded at the top end. You have Zudinator, Ryuke, Xylus, all playing pretty well. You have Yip up there as well. You have Cut Paper. I think the ask for Germany is you need Kriller and Whitecat to go crazy again, and you need them to pretty much 2v4 Canada in some cases. Obviously, you still have that backing roster, and there was some scores Germany got that were pretty insane, notably on the hiddens, like Germany getting number 1 overall on Hidden 3, getting number 2 on Hidden 2 and Hidden 1, which so I think the hidden matchup is going to be really interesting, considering Canada also got number 1 on Hidden, and I think is a really good hidden team, so that's going to be pretty close. I think Canada is quite stronger on speed, and as Tig mentioned, this isn't really a speed pool, but Germany did get number 1 on DT2, but Canada and Australia did not play it. Canada playing really well on DT3, absolutely blowing Germany out of the water on Nomad 5, getting almost a million more score than them. So I honestly think this Canada speed team is better than Germany's. And then I think after that, there's going to be a lot of close matchups on some of the gimmickier picks, which there's a lot of in this pool. But I just think the 4-man for Canada is going to be a little bit stronger, so I'm going to give it to them.
Yeah, look, Germany, Canada. This was the only match I came into this prediction stream being still sort of undecided. And I think it's for fair reason. I think this is going to be extremely close no matter what. You look at Kriller's performance over the course of the tournament so far, and just the way he's been performing over every round is ridiculous. It's what you expect from him, right? But I got to give props to Whitecat for stepping up as the pools start to scale more. He performed extremely well, like Vorty said, top 6 in performances overall or top 5. So, as we get into these later pools now, finals, this pool looks extremely difficult, by the way. Some of the maps in this pool are ridiculous.
It's a big spike.
Yeah, this is a big difficulty spike for sure. I just feel like Germany scales slightly better than Canada does into these late rounds. And especially as well with like Zytfrost putting up some pretty good scores as well in the semifinals. Germany had number 1 on No Mod 1, they had number 1 on Hidden 3, number 1 on DT2, and they top scored the tiebreaker. Number 2 on Hidden 1, number 2 on Hidden 2. So, Canada beating them out on Hidden 1, getting number 1 there. But I think Germany, the tapping maps in general are going to be very close, but I actually probably favor Germany, I think, on some of the more difficult, really techie picks, like that No Mod 4, which is just ridiculously hard. I think Germany scales a bit better. I think Krilla is going to pop off, but Canada, they played extremely well against Australia, right? Probably the second best performance of the week. Only Australia probably having the best performance of the week over them. So I think at the end of the day, this match is going to be extremely close, but I'm going to give it to Germany. It's either 7-5 or 7-6. I'm going to say 7-6 to Germany tiebreaker.
Oh, you already know what I'm voting.
Yeah, this isn't fair.
This is
the minute 40 picked Canada, it was over.
The slight bias here on the desk.
The actual
Canada.
Yeah.
I do think I mostly agree with what's already been said by both the Australians. Actually, I think Canada's speed roster is better than Germany's. Just based off of how they played last week. Like you have performances like Curtis beating the allegations of being gapped on aim on DT3, right? Like, if that guy can pull off similar scores this week, I think they're looking really, really good on speed. And yeah, Germany had the number 1 score on DT2, but I think that leaderboard looks a lot different if it gets picked in Australia versus Canada, because they are the top scorers on both DT3 and No Mod 5.
Australia Canada just 8 ways last week's DT2, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, like I don't think Germany is number 1 on that anymore if you see Australia Canada pick that, and if it's not banned by Canada, and I think they just beat Germany on the map. So like I don't think Germany actually wins speed here. I do think Germany's roster does scale a little better than Canada's, and I think Canada is going to have trouble on the gimmick maps. I think that's where Germany is going to find a lot of their picks. But I think one of the other big things that makes me want to put Canada here over Germany is the switch up in Hard Rock 1, going from kind of this aim consistency, high circle size, almost all aim map with just a couple of like stack triples and bursts, to an aim stream hybrid consistency pick from Jonathan LFJ, Falcom Sound Team, right? I think is really good for some of the players on Canada who are a little bit better at that kind of stuff. And the fact that there is no mod aim pick this week. It's a double free mod aim pick, which is something Canada is notoriously good at across every World Cup, right? Even last weekend, yeah, Germany has the better score compared to Canada on Free Mod 1, but it is by less than 60,000 points. So that is a very contested skill set for these two teams. So I do think Canada is a little favored on the pool, and I think that's enough to offset some of the extra scaling that Germany might have here. So I'm going to give it to Canada. I do think it's going to be a tough match. I do think it's going to be very, very close. I debated pretty heavily on my own stream when I was doing pick'ems whether to put Canada or Germany for pick'ems, and I think I have this like 7-5 or 7-6. Like I don't think this is a blowout at all. I think it's going to be a really good match. But I give it to Canada a little bit because of the pool and because they actually do have a pretty good speed team that scales really well into the later stages with players like Curtis, Xylus, Ryuke, Stoof. Like all of these players are going to be pretty solid this weekend.
Yo, Stoof is gonna FC Freedom Dive in match. Thoughts?
I'm so down.
100%.
I'm ready. All right, on to the next matchup. That is going to be Philippines versus the United States. This is we've already discussed both of these teams pretty heavily in the recap so far. Why don't we start going the opposite way this time? We'll start with Mavs to get us started for Philippines versus United States, because I don't know, I feel like there's a pretty heavy consensus for this sort of match.
Yeah, I think the overall consensus probably going forward here is definitely going to be the United States taking this one. I think probably fairly convincingly. And I think if they were to face up last round in semis, I actually think this would have been a much, much closer matchup. You saw some of the performances Philippines had against South Korea, right? They were looking really good on some of the tech picks. They did really well on DT1, number 2 on DT1, number 2 on the Nomad 4. And Enri and Hyuk specifically playing extremely well, as well as Nathan Ram with a few really good supporting scores. I think this Philippines roster would have had a decent shot maybe at bringing it close against the United States last week. But this week, like I said before, the pool is so hard now. It's ridiculous. I don't know if I've ever seen a pool this difficult in OWC, period.
No, never.
Yeah. So it's just United States they just scale way too well, man. I don't know. There's no way Philippines is going to be able to put up a 4-man roster. I think that's going to compete with the United States on pretty much any pick. Granted, I think Philippines will take a couple maps. I think they'll have a few pop-off performances. I'm thinking maybe it's going to be something like a 7-3, but this United States roster, like, they came back to life last week. They just looked ridiculous again, especially against Poland. That Rectagon Free Mod 2 Hard Rock score, that was like, highlight of the weekend, aside from worst HR players.
One of the highlights of the weekend. There were a lot of
aside from
really good
worst HR players, Blue Zenith FC, I think. Of
No
course,
37 Free Mod 4 Hidden SS, Crystal
and that was
Free Mod
also
4 Hard
nuts.
Rock FC. There were a lot of good scores.
a
Anyway,
lot of really good scores.
Definitely that Hard Rock 2, the Free Mod 2 with the Hard Rock there. A map's insanely difficult. Like, Recticon looked ridiculous. Vaxei again performing well, going back to his roots like you guys were talking about in the semifinals recap, just not over practicing the pool. It works out for him. He looked fantastic again. And I think US probably take this. I think Philippines are probably just going to get speed abused by the US, and then they're still going to win on the Philippines picks, because I just don't think they have the 4-man. In saying that, it was a 2-4 on the head-to-head, Philippines winning 2 over the 4 that USA won. But yeah, like I said, the pool's getting so hard now. I think USA take this 7-2, 7-3.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree. I think this is going to be the least close match of the weekend. I think this is the only match I have in my pick'ems that's less close than like a 7-4. I think Philippines already had fourth man issues. I mean, they had a B rank 160k on Nomad 3. They had a B rank 299k on Nomad 4. I think they also had a different Hidden 1 279k. All of those players were a player that wasn't either Enri, Nathan, Ram, or Hyuk. And I think they're going to struggle even more with that on this significantly harder pool. Meanwhile, the USA, you have Takeda, you have Rectagon, you have Vaxei obviously as your core 3, and you have plenty of specialists who can still play at this star rating. So I don't think, because on paper, the actual skill sets that's represented in this pool, I think is good for Philippines. I just think the overall skill difficulty is a little bit too high. And I do think this is where the United States skill cap is really, really going to shine. At this point, seeding is actually a lot less relevant because of how much harder this pool is going to be than the qualifiers pool. So at this point, like, this is where United States is going to be looking really, really good with their skill cap. I think they're also going to look really good in grand finals if they make it there. We'll have to see. But yeah, I think this is going to be United States, and I don't think it's going to be too close of a match.
Yep, I think you guys have mostly said it. Pool is just too hard for the Philippines. The United States are still one of the teams with the highest skill caps in the entire tournament, as they have been for many years, and I don't think it's going to be super close with the scaling. So I'm going to have to take them probably 7-3. I do think, like you guys mentioned, Philippines has a couple maps where they can get points, but it's just not going to be enough.
Yep, this is just United States versus Poland again. Opposing team gets 4th playered and just gets outscaled, and United States wins it. It's been said.
Yeah. I mean, Philippines was already getting 4th playered last week on several maps. I feel like it's just going to be worse. I don't have too much else to add. The core player for Philippines is fantastic, but a core roster is not enough. You need the fill players, and that is exactly how the USA builds their roster, based off assuming that they make it to grand finals weekend and picking the players who perform best on really, really hard maps and fill in well for the team. And so a roster that is built to do that is always going to scale pretty well. They have not had issues with getting fourth playered so far. There's been like a couple of maps where I think we saw like a couple 300K something scores from the US last week, but not to the extent on either number of maps or caliber of score that we saw from the Philippines last week. So I think they're just getting outscaled. Yeah, no, it's USA. I also have this like pretty one-sided in pick'ems. I think like 7-2. And that is going to bring us very quickly into our next matchup, which is the two projected winners that we had from both of our losers bracket matches. And predicting the winner or projected winner of now Canada versus United States, assuming these two teams get through their first losers bracket match as predicted so far. And you know, I'll start us off for this one. We can just reverse order entirely here.
I can't imagine who Dio and iFlame are possibly going to pick in this matchup. Oh man,
You know,
the suspense is killing me, guys.
You would think, but I'm actually just going United States because their roster is just better, and feel like that's not ultra controversial here because again
USA
they are
Finals
just
week scaling.
it's USA Finals week scaling. What can I say? Like, I think there's a near 100% chance that USA gets through the losers bracket overall. I don't think that they are going to face super significant hurdles here in the losers bracket, even against Canada, who I think are going to do better against them than Philippines. I think Canada's going to look really good on speed again, but is going to get outplayed on a lot of other maps that USA just has a really, really strong, well-scaled core roster for. I don't like voting against Canada, obviously. I put Canada against USA earlier in the tournament, but finals weekend is a different story, especially when the pool is harder than grand finals from last year. So, yeah, it's USA.
Dang. Well, I'll just go next and say USA. My hater era from last week is apparently just quickly gone. I think to avoid the United States getting to grand finals, they had to lose to Poland last week.
Yeah,
because once you get to a
100%.
finals pool, they're just too good. I'm just with Theo on this one. Like, their skill cap across the roster is just crazy, and it's like last year they lost in the winners bracket, but they go into losers bracket and they just outscale everyone the rest of the way. It's how they've won OWC for 6 years in a row. I mean, like, it's just or 5 years in a row, making it 6 years in a row possibly. They're just better late round, and they construct late round focused rosters, and here we are once more in a late round. And I don't know, these teams have played a couple times in past years, and USA has just won, right? So here we go again.
Yep. As I'm sure everyone was expecting, I'm going to have to predict the United States this time.
Oh man, the screenshots.
Canadians are
Oh,
off the
you're a
train
traitor.
now.
Bro,
Oh,
the
no.
Twitter screenshots are gonna go crazy.
I did not expect that from iFlame.
Real Canadian.
know.
Real Canadian trader.
I really wanted to predict Canada here, but this happens every single year, every OWC. I have so much hope for Canada, and they get to finals. One time they made it to grand finals, but without fail, they get outscaled in usually fourth place. Once it was third. I do think this will be closer than previous years where they've gotten, to either third or fourth and just gotten completely swept by either the US or Germany time and time again. I think they are good enough that they can take a few points off the US. But realistically, I think the US, despite their earlier loss to Canada, are still the second best team in this tournament. They have so much scaling, so much depth. They are still, of course, the 5-time reigning world champions, despite some, being the 3 seed this time around. And yeah, I would say 7-4.
Oof.
Ooh.
When even the native Canadian only gives his team 4 points. Yikes.
Yeah. I mean,
That's a
I'm a
bit
citizen of both countries. I get to swap when I want to, but damn, even the native Canadian is going USA here. That's how you know.
Surely one
All
of
right.
40 and
40
has to
maps.
pick Canada. They have to have some reason to pick Canada here, right?
Yeah.
Here's how
After what
Canada can still win.
After what their boys did to Canada last week, oh man.
It's actually kind of brutal because I also put 7-4 for United States on pick'ems. So
Oh man.
Oh,
Yeah,
I have in my pickups Germany beating Canada, and then USA versus Germany I think is closer than USA versus Canada, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think for this matchup, I do think that the scaling roster of the United States is just a little bit too strong. I actually think Canada. I mean, just because of the showing they had up against Australia, they might have the potential to win on speed, despite United States speed roster being pretty good. Canada, I think, had like 600k on United States on No Mod 5. So speed might still be in Canada's favor, but there's not that much speed in the pool to really dive into. And I do think at some point, just the monsters on the United States roster are just going to make the difference. I don't think Canada has that same level of firepower. I still think it could potentially be pretty close, especially if United States plays like they did against Canada the first time, and Canada plays against the United States like they did that first time as well. We could see a different story, but I don't really expect that to happen at this level of difficulty. So I think United States will make their way through this and get into grand finals, and then, dude, if United States wins the OWC again, dude, I'm gonna be so mad. I'm gonna be so upset at this pace, because it's looking like it could be doable. But we'll see what Mavs calls. If he calls USA, this is gonna be the funniest screenshot if Canada wins in the entire world.
Well, I was probably going to put USA, but now
Now.
But now,
this is how Canada can win. So I actually think I do actually think Canada probably performed on par, if not better, than the United States did in semifinals round. Because you also got to take into consideration the fact that Canada only played one match and they looked extremely good in that match. Like I said before, probably the second best performing team overall in the weekend, maybe arguably third. They looked really, really good. But, you know, like you guys have already mentioned, moving into this finals pool, it's so difficult. The scaling probably is on the United States side. But like Vordy mentioned, I actually think Canada probably still wins tapping. And my main reason being Canada looked ridiculous on Skin Thief last week. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think there's any tapping maps in this pool that are harder necessarily than Skin Thief. I actually think Canada will be completely fine on the tapping. I think they can probably win it against the United States, assuming they can play up to the standard they have been the past 2 weeks. But again, it's probably going to be close. United States is looking really good again. I think this match is going to be closer than the 4-0 here suggests from everyone. Look, I would give it to the United States in a very close fashion, but I'm going to say Canada. I want to just be the only one to give it to Canada here. You guys are fake Canadians. I'm going to give it to
Yeah, let's
Damn.
see it in the
Canadian
pick'ems,
here.
Mavs. Let's
Yeah.
see it in the pick'ems.
Let's see it in the pick'ems.
Let's see it
Yeah.
in the pick'ems.
Let's
Put
check
your
the
money
pick'ems
where
here.
it is.
I didn't do the pick'ems because I missed qualifiers. So, you know, I can do this. I can do this without lying.
Also,
I'll
like,
give it to Canada, but yeah.
there is a good point to take away from this is last week, Canada won like all but one pick in common, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And like they split Nomad 2, like USA, one of their scores was better, one of their scores was worse. And I'm pretty sure Canada won every other map that they had in common except for Fremod 1.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And even that one was only like 160k or something. Like Canada had super good scores that they just lost to a better team.
Yeah.
But
The
problem is that this pool, the finals pool, is notably
so
harder
hard.
than the semis pool was.
the other problem with that is that they only had in common Nomad 5, DT3, which of course we're already assuming Canada wins tapping. Fremod 4, Hidden 1, which Canada is like, you know, good gimmick team. And Fremod 1, where United States actually has the head-to-head win. Same for the one that was split in Nomad 2. And I think a lot of the other maps in the pool are just USA maps, like Canada getting number 4 on Hidden 3, for example. I think USA probably has a pretty good time with that, with players like Taquito on the roster. USA number 1 on Hidden 1, so it's not like they're necessarily, or Hidden 2, excuse me, so it's not like they're necessarily bad at the low AR. Number 1 on Nomad 3, above South Korea on Nomad 3 is pretty sick. Like, I think there's a lot of other maps that in the pool that USA are really, really good on. And so head-to-heads are useful, but don't tell the whole story. And I think the whole story is USA is probably better on more of the rest of the pool than Canada is. Unfortunately, for Canada. I think that's going to do it for us on this match. We're going to move on to the last one. Last
Oh, boy.
match of the weekend. It is a winners bracket match. It is the winners finals.
Oh, boy.
South Korea versus Australia. Those are reversed on the bracket. South Korea is the first seed, coming in first in qualifiers, winning every match so far. Relatively dominant until last week, where they finally had a challenger in the Philippines, and Australia, of course, getting through every challenge so far, beating out Poland in the quarterfinals, and then beating out Canada last weekend in the semifinals. Now here in the winners finals, top 3 secured for the first time against Korea. Let's have the Australians start us out. Let's juice. Why are they winning?
want to go
Paul, do
first,
you wanna
Max?
Okay, I'll take it. Look, this is why I'm here. Okay, I think Australia this year, man, it's just such a glob, dude. Like these players are so insanely good. I have to give props to like all of these new rookies who have come into the roster and just shown what they can do. Like this is the Australian team we've never seen before, like performing this well in the World Cup. They've already secured top 3. I think the momentum is in their favor. The underdog story is here. I think with the way South Korea performed in semifinals, and don't get me wrong, they didn't perform bad by any means, but Australia, man, like, is anyone in disagreement that they weren't the best performing team of the semis, right? Like, they just looked ridiculous. And they only played one match as well, which you also take into consideration with the lower bracket teams playing 2 matches. I think in this match, Australia... Now, T1G, I know you were saying before how there like isn't too much tapping in the pool. I do agree. I think last week's pool favors Australia a lot heavier than this week's does. I think this week's is leaning a bit more towards SK. But I do think still on every DT, aside from the DT4, I think Australia just flattens South Korea on all 3 of them. I'm going to be honest. DT1, DT2, DT3, I think is a complete... just stomp on those. And then you've got Free Mod 4. I think Australia wins that as well. You've got that questionable map in No Mod 5 slot, which I don't know how to even predict. But I actually think Australia, I think they have a better skill cap. I'm going to say it. Maybe that's a hot take.
That's bold.
I think they have
That is
better
bold.
skill cap than South Korea overall across the entire roster. That might be a really hot take, but they've got some ridiculous skill cap on some of these players. AKNZX, like, super underrated player, by the way. Like, this guy is a freak on, like, mechanics in general. Zintex as well. Look, I know it's going to be close. I know it's going to be really, really close. But like I said before, South Korea, they had some of the bottom scores on some of the DT maps last week. I think they had the 10th. They were 10th on DT1, like the bottom score, and like 8th on DT2. Like, Australia aren't going to be contested on any tapping maps in the pool. And then after that, I think they just try and pick as much mechanics as possible. I think both teams maybe take their picks. Maybe there'll be a break point either way. I think it's going to be really close, but of course I'm going to give it to Australia. I mean, why would I not? I think it's going to be a 7-5 Australia.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep going on the Australian bandwagon. I do think that this is what I thought going into the tournament in terms of like qualifier stage. I actually think that this Australian roster has potentially the highest skill cap team in the tournament, other than potentially the United States, in terms of the high end of star rating. And notably, that's being driven by Emrek being the highest skill cap player in the tournament, also having Box, also having AKNZX, who is, as Maz mentioned, is really underrated and is a really high mechanics player. You obviously also have Dummy as that core 4 roster, and then the rest of the team. You also have some really good high end as well. Even, with gimmick things like JGLF, Saya pops off on a lot of things. I think Zintex didn't play as much last week, but the week before we saw him go off, and then Slash on things like Tech. I do genuinely think that the skill cap of this team is insane, and I do wonder as well, because of this unprecedentedly difficult finals pool. I wonder if some of the fourth players on South Korea might feel it a little bit now. I still think Worst HR player is going to play fantastic. Karch is going to play fantastic. Tuna is going to play fantastic, and they'll still have maps that is going to be favored. I think this is going to be an extremely close match for Australia to win. I'm putting them winning on tiebreaker on my pick'ems because I don't think this is going to be an easy match. I think Australia has at least 2 really good maps in whatever doesn't get banned out of DT2 and DT3. DT3 is a little bit more gimmicky in terms of its density and BPM. Density and being a pretty dense map and having a bit more aim in it. But I still think Australia is really favored on DT1, 2, and 3. I think they pretty much have 2 free wins out of those maps. Meanwhile, I think Australia will have a lot of chances to get some sneaky breakpoints on a lot of Korean picks, especially, with how they played on Nomad 2 last week. And this pool is even harder. And this is where having MREC notably on your team, having a few really high skill cap players, Box, being able to play at this level, I think will make the difference. And with how we saw Korea play last weekend, honestly, I don't know if this Korean roster is as infallible as we maybe thought after they got seed 1. So I really genuinely think, and this isn't just like Australian bias copium, I actually think Australia has like a really good shot at this pool. I think it's extremely close. I do think my faith in the boys is pushing me over the line just a little bit to give it to Australia instead of South Korea. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how this match goes. And I think despite whether or not Australia wins this match, I'm really excited to see how they perform on grand finals level pools, which they are guaranteed to at least have a shot on. So yeah, really keen to see this match.
Yeah, 2 Australias so far. To me, I think this will definitely be a close matchup. Australia, as you guys both mentioned, was the best performing team last week by quite a bit. But South Korea is just really good. And I think this one comes down to the pooling. We've already spent a lot of time talking about how kind of little tapping there is in the pool. Mavs, you mentioned you think Australia just wins DT1, DT3, DT4. DT3 is kind of just
DT2.
DT2. Okay.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
1, 2,
Yeah.
3.
Four
Okay.
is a worst HR player map.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
even DT3, it is mostly just alt map, right? There's a couple bursts in there, but it's not really too speedy as long as you can manage those bursts. So I do think Australia is going to have their points, but I think South Korea will just ban out speed. 2 speed maps, which leaves kind of not much speed left in the pool. And
I will say, I want to real quick. I don't want to change like anything, but like they can't really, because DT 1 through 3 are kind of the only speed maps in this pool, so they can't ban out 2 speed maps because they can only ban out one of the DTs. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, in terms of skill cap, I guess it's fair to have some concern as for the 4th player of South Korea, but this is a team that took the USA to tiebreaker last year in the grand finals, if I'm remembering correctly. On top of that, this like group of players, not even including the kind of star players in Karcher, Flying Tune, and Worst HR, they placed 4th place in Course Ace Open. So they all very clearly have a high
They were
skill cap.
second this year, actually. They were second this year, and
Yeah.
the tiebreaker for Korea versus USA last year was in finals.
It was semis.
Or semis, yeah, semis. Not in grand finals. Bracket reset was, I think, 7-4.
It was it was like 7-3, 7-4 or
Okay.
something like that in
Yeah.
the grands. Like it was
Yeah.
not particularly close.
Yeah,
USA
but I
skill
do
cap.
think their fill players have enough skill, have enough scaling to play a pool like this, and I think South Korea is probably the team that has the biggest advantage because of the pooling. There's just so much alt and aim control in this pool, which is just fantastic for South Korea with, Amami Kokoro, worst HR player, of course, Flying Tuna. And so I do think I'm gonna say 7-5 for South Korea.
All right, is it me or Dio?
I mean, I can go if you want to wait for the end.
I don't know, man.
All right, I'll go because I'm
Go
going
ahead,
South
go ahead.
Korea. Well, that'll tie us up 2-2. You can be the ending. Yeah, I predicted South Korea to win the tournament, right? So of course I'm going to predict them here to win the winners finals. I think Australia looked fantastic last weekend. A lot of that was pop-offs from particular players on certain maps, like Fremod Aim, for example, was really, really good for Australia. Some of the Gimmick Nomad was pretty solid for Australia. But looking at the score comparisons, you have kind of across the board wins for Korea on Hidden in much the same fashion that you have across the board wins for Australia on Speed. And even with Hidden 3 being a speed map last week, South Korea still had a better team score on it. So with the Hidden pool not including a speed map this week, I think it's just way better for them. There is notably fewer pure speed maps in the pool. I think Korea is just banning out Freedom Dive and probably DT2 because they can kind of play the higher BPM burst, but not really. So they're going to lose the DT1, DT3 100% of the time in this matchup. But I think that there's a lot of other really, really good picks for this team. Stuff like the Nomad 3, stuff like the DT4, stuff like the Nomad 2 Hard Rock 3 are really, really good for this team. And that doesn't even include talking about the Hidden pool from last weekend where they had a really, really good showing. I do think there are other good picks for Australia besides the speed. Obviously, they're still a very, very strong team. I think they're going to be able to contest on stuff like the Nomad 4, the Nomad 5. And I think the Nomad 5 is kind of a toss-up-y pick. I'm not sure if we're going to get that one exactly. We saw what these players were able to do on Nomad 2 last weekend in Tarte Teton. So this weekend in DL++, I think it's going to be interesting to look at for which of those teams is actually favored on the map. I'm hoping we get to see it because I think it'd be a close pick. And stuff like the double free mod aim, for example, is pretty good for Australia as well in Hell or Hell plus Glensista. But I think there's a lot of other really, really good maps in this pool for Korea, and enough of them that I think they don't have to pick into a lot of toss-up-y stuff, right? You've got double hidden, you have high circle size, precision, alt aim control in the Hard Rock pool. You've got Camo Nomad 2 at 200 BPM, which is the kind of flow aim that Korea is really good at. Similar sort of map in Quartz Shaper at a lower BPM in Hard Rock. Even more kind of aim control in the free mod 3 or in the low AR high circle size Nomad 1, right? Like this pool is kind of littered with really, really good maps for Korea, kind of across all mods. So I think they're going to have a pretty good time with this pool. And I think the scaling for Australia is not going to matter as much as the pool being very, very good for Korea this week. I think if these two teams faced off on semifinals, I would probably give this to Australia. But I think this weekend, it looks a little bit better for Korea overall. I do still think it's close. I think it's like 7-5 or tiebreaker. But even if it goes to tiebreaker, it's very hard to bet against MREC in tiebreaker. But this is like the most Flying Tuna worst HR player tiebreaker I've ever seen in my life. Like, I don't know if I can bet against the two of them on a map like that.
Yeah. I will say quickly before T1G goes, if this was a more tapping heavy pool like last week, I would 100% take Australia here, but the pool is too heavily in South Korea's favor.
Oh, I hate being in this position. I hate being in this position, man.
It's all on you. It's all on you.
Come on, man. Come on, Zeke.
I said earlier in this broadcast that South Korea is probably the team or like a top 2 team that runs out of picks last. Like they're the team that has the most options available to them and that has been able to pick into the widest variety of skill sets to make their wins happen. I also said the minute that pool released last week, and it is what it is. Like you don't, the pool is not made for any specific team. The pool is made before you know who's going to be playing it. But this is the most fucking ungodly South Korea biased pool that I've ever seen in my life. I was watching the pool showcase getting progressively more and more frustrated because I am obviously a huge Australia fan, and this pool is just anti-Australia as hell, and I'm so mad about it. There is just not nearly the pool options here for Australia that there were last week on semifinals.
It's okay, they run grinds. They run grinds.
Frustrating.
Surely.
And so, like, I'm at this spot, unfortunately, where my head and my heart are, like, arguing really heavily because I love the Australian roster. I'm super happy to see them getting this far. But this pool is so South Korea biased that I don't know how you can pick against them in this matchup. They ban one of the, like, 3 tapping maps, and then Australia has, like, 2, maybe 3 points that are, like, strictly speaking in their favor. And after that, it's just like, you look at this pool and it's like, oh, there's a worst HR player map. Hey, it's a worst HR player map. Hey, it's a worst HR player map. Hey, it's a South Korea map. Like, just down the goddamn list, it's just fucking South Korea maps. And like, it happens. Like I said, like there's a whole argument that you can have about like, oh, we're not doing slot pooling anymore. Oh, we're changing the pool format this year, and every week is going to look completely different. And it's really, really quite frustrating, I think, in this week in terms of who to pick in this match, because it just feels really hard to pick against South Korea in this matchup. I think Australia is too good for this not to be a close match. I do think that they're going to win some points, really, really one-sided favor. We saw last week South Korea fell off in grand finals, and last year's grand finals pool was somewhat similar to this finals pool, if not even easier. And we saw South Korea having some trouble on third and fourth player, but again, that was against the United States, which like had a nuts roster. But I think even with that in mind, I think there's too many picks in this particular pool that are favored to South Korea. And while my heart says Australia because I love the Australian guys, I think on paper, if I were forced, gun to my head, to make a pick in this matchup, I have to say it's South Korea, and it's like 7-5, 7-6 because the pool just has too many maps in it that are too good for them. And I'm really frustrated to be doing that because I don't want to be doing that. Because I would love for this to be a balanced pool where both teams have an equal number of maps, and at that point I would probably be picking Australia. But because this pool is really South Korea leaning, I have to pick them here. But it's going to be close, and I would absolutely not be surprised if Australia wins. And it's in full bias mode. I want Australia to win this match.
Now,
Yeah.
to be fair, I feel like last week's pool was super biased towards Australia. That was a great pool for them.
Just a little bit. All right. I'm gonna force us to wrap up here because our operator needs to go. Closing thoughts. This is going to be a really good week. It's a stacked finals week. I think there's a lot of really close matches, especially winners bracket finals. I think is going to be really close. Even with the pool, like we talked about, going towards Australia, or towards South Korea, the skill cap for Australia is fantastic, and I think they're going to be able to make use of it and take picks where you wouldn't expect them to. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that match. That's going to be it for Full Circle this weekend. Catch the OWC stream starting Saturday 19 UTC with Germany Canada, winners bracket finals in the
It's 10 UTC,
at 10
winners bracket
UTC
final.
Sunday.
5 a.m.
Other
casting, let's go.
other losers bracket match at 3 UTC. Third losers bracket match. Second one, by the way, between Philippines and the United States. 3 UTC Sunday. Other match to be determined sometime after that. Keep a lookout on the wiki and the information sheet. And that'll be it for us. Thank you very much for watching. Good luck to all the teams this weekend. Thanks to all the casters and the operator for being here. And we'll see you all next weekend, same time, same place, for the finals recap and grand finals predictions.